Welcome to this week's episode of Courageous Leaders Changing the World. Super excited for this week's guest, Tamara Meyer. Meyer.
Myers.
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you so much for having me, Cody, and also being so flexible with the recent animal events.
Yes, this is life. Life happens.
It does. It definitely does.
So the name of the podcast is Courageous Leaders Changing the World. What's been a time that you've had to be more courageous than any other time?
I'm going to say this current time right now. And it's only been recently that I've owned the speaker identity. And I think for a while there I was holding myself back. But I think it's the reason why I'm really stepping into it. And I think it's because it's a bigger impact than what I used to kind of go for. So right now, I've made a big vision, or I've had a download, you could say, about helping kids speak. And that's because my story kind of goes back to 8-year-old Tam, couldn't speak English. English was her third language. My mom's from Brazil, and she put me into drama school. So it honestly saved my life. And now owning that identity as a speaker, it's not just about me anymore, because I think knowing what it helped me when I was a little girl going through life, and now helping kids as that being a vision, and also, I guess, industry leaders and professionals to amplify their voice. I think this has been the most courageous thing right now because it's fresh, it's new, and I'm taking steps every week, I guess, to kind of go into it and embark on it. But at the same time too, I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing because it's new. But I think it's been really beautiful from an evidence-based what happens when you make that decision. And I'm just following through with that.
What are some of the core things that you've been facing off with it?
Yeah, I think one, when I made the epiphany happen on a podcast and then more speaking about it, a client of mine does homeschooling for her kids. So she said, let's talk about it. So that was the first one. We haven't spoken about it yet. And I think when I started to reach out to people about, letting me speak on stage, and the return of what people have said, like Dr. John DeMartini putting my speaker kit out into the world, it's given me really that belief, even though obviously the belief begins within, to see like it feels right. It doesn't feel like it's ego Tam or significant Tam that wants all the attention Tam. I think now I'm kind of realizing that this is really the purpose I'm in. And obviously also going through the TED Talk journey that I'm currently working on as well.
What's been your journey with being on stage then?
Yeah, it's been since I was 3. And I think it's because my mum used to always say, you didn't stand still, you're always hyperactive, undiagnosed ADHD, and I don't like to put labels on me. But I think since the age of 3, I was in ballet school. And then I think, you and I spoke about structure. I think my mum wanted to keep me busy because of what was going on behind the scenes, and it helped. And I can see why she did it. But yeah, I would be going after school to 4 p.m., from 4 p.m. to about 8 p.m. dancing. And then it was Irish dancing, ballet dancing, acting school. And then it was into my whole life growing up. I think I wanted to be an actor because that little girl was like, you want to follow your dreams? Look at me. And I think it was also my way of, I feel, hiding behind the pain that was going on. So then there was me auditioning for NIDA, me not getting accepted, going into the professional dancing space, and then all the way through to the fitness space. And then I still sort of realized every stage wasn't coming back to who I was. I think I was sort of putting a Band-Aid on, or I thought it was my way of helping people, each sort of different stages that I was in. And it wasn't until, I guess, the business side of things and going into business coaching kind of led me to where I am now. So there's a lot of different stages, but it's kind of like a really messy, beautiful story at the same time too, because it just kind of shows the progression, but also the mission more and more. And it kind of makes you connect all the dots of life. So that's kind of where it's brought me here now.
What were some of the things that you're facing off with behind the scenes in your childhood then?
Yeah, I always say that life was like a gypsy life for me. My dad was a gambling addict. We were, it's weird. Like I look back on everything and people are like, I don't even know how you're alive. And it was just for me, it was normal seeing the money coming in, money going out. You know, we went to 6 different schools. Obviously, I only realized this as well when my mum recently told me that we ran away from Germany. My dad was a fugitive, like things like that. That was quite dysfunctional and traumatic, I would say. And I think probably the most pinnacle event that I always talk about is when I was 12 years old. My mum, myself, and my little brother were coming home from school. I think I was in year 7. And we had this house in Blacks Road in Pennant Hills. And my mum went to open the door and it wouldn't open. And my mum calls my dad and he said, I haven't been paying rent for 2 years. So we were on the streets, and they're the things that was normal for us. You know, I'd help my dad with letterbox drops, you know, because he didn't have a job. Then he would have a job. One minute he'd come in a Mercedes-Benz. The next minute we're walking to school. Though there were the things throughout our life we went through, and so many other things as well. But I think I wouldn't change it for the world. I think at the time though, you know, you're like, fuck you, God. Why is this happening? And now it makes sense. So they're sort of the things that growing up was what we were sort of going through as well.
What's been your spiritual journey then?
That's a really good question. I've had an interesting relationship with God, I guess. I think because we did grow up going to church. My mum was Christian. Actually, was she Catholic first? I can't remember. But I think we were Protestant as well. So we went to church growing up. And when my parents divorced, you know, the church weren't happy about it. So I think there was a big fuck you, Tam, you know, moment. And even weirdly enough though, because there was a point where the church wanted to obviously get us back because they didn't want to judge us for my parents getting divorced. So we went back, but then I was rebelling at 15, you know. I'd go to church, I'd be drinking. I was drunk at church, and then I'd see people doing the tongues thing, and then I was like, what the fuck's going on? And then a great part of that story, I guess, is I remember one of the youth leaders would say, I see you speaking, and I was like, sure. And that was a really interesting moment only recently that I remembered when I started to unpack everything. But yeah, and then as I started to step into more of life coaching, personal development, I was obsessed with Tony Robbins, NLP. I'd worked with mentors who were very into spirituality, and then I was in a group where the spiritual mentor was going through stuff. So then there was a lot of, I think, trust lost, right? But then recently working with a kinesiologist, I think I've always had a belief. I've just had a really interesting relationship with what it is, who it is it real? And more when I've done the work with her, she's, I guess, given me more hope and belief that there's always someone watching over me, whether it's God or universe. I always speak to universe, to be honest. But yeah, I've always been in a religious sort of family, I think. There's a little bit of where my mum stepped into Jehovah's Witness when she went to Tasmania. And I think she was just finding something to hold on to when she was going through her divorce. So yeah, that's my journey at the moment. And I do believe I think I'm not as superficial. I think I'm learning that there is a gift I've been given, and as my little brother too. And I think we're realizing more that gift can help people, not just about me being seen, because I wasn't really loved growing up. So I think I'm realizing more as I'm speaking to you, you know, the power of what the universal God or whatever everyone calls him or her. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting to be able to see people's journey with it. My family is a great example of like many different directions in terms of religion. I went to like church camp growing up and everything.
Really?
So gone to church, you know, every week till I was about 15, and then my parents let me make my own choices, and you know, went way away from that and more into, you know, the spiritual space for many years, and you know, kind of comes back around sometimes. And it's, you know, it's interesting. Like my siblings, my sister's a little bit spiritual. My brother's Scientologist. My other brother's
wow,
like,
that's cool.
Presbyterian church and stuff, and then my dad's like a Christian Scientist. So it's like huge, big spectrum of like
the difference of Presbyterian, like all of that.
I don't know the difference between them two. I just know that they're different.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to be able to see what people's journey with, the relationship with, a higher power is, to be able to start to see, how they live their life. I was listening to, I think it was like Diary of a CEO, and they had someone on recently, and he asked, it was this lady that was talking about how emotions are created. And he asked her about her spiritual beliefs, and it was like every other person that you hear talk about those things are like, it's like there has to be a higher power. And she was just like, no,
wow,
nothing, just science. It's like there is no evidence of this. And I was just like, whoa, for all of the things that you've created, you look at like Albert Einstein, even Albert Einstein's like, science can only take you so far. It's like there's all of these different things, and all of his biggest, breakthroughs were when he was actually like deeply connected to himself. And, when we can create that deeper level of authenticity, especially if we're speaking, if we're bringing our voice to the world, then that allows us to be able to just bring forth the perfect reflection of what needs to come up for that person that's in front of us. And that's the power that so many speakers have, to be able to be that person who puts themselves out there, to be on the edge of themselves, so that then they can actually have the reflections of all the people in the audience. And so many people need that. And a lot of people that kind of get into that start off with that mechanism of needing to be seen. And when it comes from that, it starts from that wounding place, but then it comes from an integrated place when you can actually go beyond that. What's been your journey with being seen?
Oh, it's been hard, I think. I think it's a lot of, what's really interesting? It's a lot of facade, a lot of shame, a lot of realizations, and a lot of, now I can't unsee what I've seen. And I'm one to always own my mistakes or my responsibilities in my journey. But I think for sure with everything I was going through, I think my heart was always in the right place. Like, I know it sounds really silly to say I've always wanted to help people. It's the truth. But I guess it always came from the wrong place, because when I was a dancer, I was, hiding behind still knocks, Duramine, I was numbing myself. And then when I was in the fitness space, I was avoiding everything because I thought physically, if I looked good, and helping people with their physicality, I'm helping people. And I think I had to go through complex post-traumatic stress to kind of realize there's so much that I'm still needing, still to this day right now, to work on. And I think it's a constant journey for me to self-accept of who I am, even party Tam, even business Tam, even, speaker Tam, even, partner Tam. Like, I feel it's a constant journey to still love me unconditionally of who I am, no matter what, which has been, it's been interesting to say the least. So I think it's more about realization, ownership, but also making sure that it's coming from a place of love. And I do pull myself out of it. I'm like, Tam, what was that? Was that ego, Tam? Why did you book a business class ticket with the girls to America, And that was actually a really interesting part in the business space. I think I was really angry at myself. I think I was really angry at people getting really successful too. And then when I first experienced making money and all the wounds of my dad with the gambling and even the showiness of things, I think I was doing that and I didn't realize it. And then I realized why my business was good, but it wasn't to where it was now because I wasn't owning that version of me, or I was just focusing on how I looked rather than helping people. So it's been an interesting journey to be continued for sure. I think it will always be something I need to work on.
Yeah, definitely. Life's going to serve up the next thing for us to be able to look at. And it's that ongoing journey. As soon as we perceive that we've made it, we've kind of lost it.
Well, that's true. Once you think you're healed, it's like, no. No. No.
Yeah, I talk about this with Lewis all the time.
He's great.
What's the quote? It's like, as soon as you
think you're good or something.
Yeah. As soon as you perceive that you're the master, you no longer are.
Yeah, that's so true. It's kind of scary too, right?
Yeah.
Because you're like, okay, oh no, I'm back down again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that thing what I said before, when you have seen it, you can't unsee the healing journey and the growth as well.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're supporting people to be able to bring forth more of their voice, what do you help people with in that?
Yeah, I think I'm a big vision type of girl. I think I've realized that I want them to own their truth and their story, because I think once they own that, that's their authentic self, you know? And I feel like part of my structured brain is about strategizing how we put the concepts or the pillars, I guess you could say, to make it really impactful. And I feel like because of my dancing and acting and also singing career, I realized there's power in learning, you know, those elements when you are on stage. It's not about performing though. And I feel like that's where I really want to take finding people's voices to really own who they are. I think there were moments where I've lost my power from my voice because I listened to people and didn't trust my intuition at the same time too. So I feel that's how I really want to help people with that for stage, but also behind the scenes with their brand. You know, I think that all kind of correlates and really connects really beautifully. And because I do love strategy, I think it's important to have that. But I'd never want them to lose sight of who they are, because I think it's important, as you would know as a coach, you know, you give them the power to also listen as opposed to you telling them what to do.
Mm. Yeah, I remember being in one of Preston's containers and he's like, you know, a great coach. Was it Preston's container?
Do I know him?
Preston Smiles?
No, I don't know who that is.
Okay. He's from America, comes over every couple of years and runs an event over here.
Oh, wow. Maybe you and I can go together.
Been twice, so what's one more time?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I think it was him who said, you know, a great coach doesn't tell you what to see, he tells you where to look.
I like that.
Yeah.
Because you speak on stage too.
Yep.
How do you feel about speaking on stage? Do you do you like it?
Yeah, it's my life. So
that makes sense.
That's why I do a podcast as well.
That makes sense.
You know, my journey with it is interesting. It's interesting. I was reflecting when you're talking about, you know, you look back in hindsight and all the different pieces. My parents, my entire childhood are like, you're going to become a teacher. And I'm like, not a chance.
Wow.
No way. And I would say, I'm like, I'm a horrible child to deal with. I don't want to deal with other people's children. So I now teach adults.
They're just as bad. I'm the biggest child.
So I'm very, very introverted. So, you know, a lot of introverts hide on stage. So you start to bring forth all of these things and then you fall into the performative nature of, you know, speaking that plays out. And, you know, it's one of those things that I think speaking is the most fun that you can have with your clothes on. And
I'm waiting to hear for their speaking event with no clothes.
Well, you just got to be in the spiritual community for that. So there'll be something.
Oh, okay, there'll be someone. But you know, it's funny. I heard from Julian Treasure, he's an expert in speaking, actually more in voice, but he said introverts are probably the best speakers ever.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
That's like, own it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been a journey for me in terms of speaking. I remember I used to manage bars in Brisbane in my party era. That's why I was laughing when you were talking about your party era.
I'm an open book, guys.
Yeah. In our 6-day event, our most recent one, I think I told more party stories than I've ever done before, because that specific group was like a big party group in the earlier years.
What type of drugs? Sorry. That's another topic.
Yeah. Ecstasy was my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it, like Red Hearts or Mitsubishi?
Yeah.
Wow.
The dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was working in a bar, and I worked in a bar so that people would talk to me. I wouldn't have to talk to them because I was so introverted. And then from there, I was like, this is not really, you know, expanding out my capacity enough. So I became a PT. So I had to go and talk to people. But, you know, most of the time I'd actually just hide in the office and get all my clients from outside the gym anyway.
Wow.
So I was that introverted. And then I remember I went to it's like a multi-level marketing thing that's you come along and there's all these speakers and stuff. And I remember seeing all these people walk across stage and I'm like, they're shit. I'm going to be a speaker.
Wow.
And in that moment, I was like, all right, I'm going to start speaking. And I did a few things here and there, but it probably would have been like 7 or 8 years before I seriously got into speaking.
Really?
Like I'd run like small events, like, you know, 4 to 8 kind of people.
Yeah.
But then that was it.
Really?
I was like, I'd just play small in that. And then eventually I was just like, right, well, I have a very different journey in personal development. Like in terms of like coaching, it's always been groups.
Yeah.
Like so many people get started in one-on-one, but it's like all groups for me.
That's true, actually.
Yeah. So my path was like always groups because I'm more of a teacher. Like I talk about different coaches. There's people who initiate people, then there's strategists, and then there's like teachers. Like that's why I get along with Lewis because he's a teacher as well.
He really is. Yeah. Yes, I love Lewis.
So it was an interesting journey. And then it's just been this unfolding of like, all right, well, what's the next thing with my speaking? What's the next thing with integrating all of my wounds of needing to be seen? Because if you're very shy, then you're kind of not seen, you're not heard. So you start to go into that and it becomes this deeper sense of ownership of that, of facing off with that and, being okay with being misunderstood.
Yeah, I really love that. Do you feel like everyone has a need to be seen, or is that just...
Everyone has it to a certain degree, but it's not part of their core wounding.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
The way that I talk about it is everyone has a wound profile. You've got universal wounds that everyone has: abandonment, betrayal, unlovable, not good enough. But then there's also specific wounds that play out for that individual. And then often what happens is the work that you do is based on your wounds.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
If you become a speaker, it's like it's all about being seen. It's all about being seen. It's seen, power, understanding. They're the three primary things, because most coaches become coaches because they need to understand things. So they learn about human behavior because they couldn't understand what was going on, especially with their parents in their childhood. So they need to understand human behavior and why people do the things that they do. So that's why they become a coach. And then if you then add the being on stage piece, it's normally about being seen. The next layer of that is like, what's the reputation? What's the brand that you build? Because that's another layer of being seen and also judged as part of that. And then the power piece is all of the pieces where you've been kind of powerless in your life and actually starting to own the power where you've given it to someone who's an authority. So that's a teacher, preacher, parent, where you've outsourced your power to all of those people. So what's been your journey with that dynamic of you kind of mentioned it a little bit before when you've got like spiritual teachers and things like that. What's been your journey with kind of reclaiming your power?
I think for me, when I did get my pro card, it was like a really big achievement because it was kind of like, okay, during the process for that, it was about healing through working on, your inner wounds. Obviously, just before the show, I was diagnosed, and I know that not many people identify being diagnosed with certain things, but I think that was where I felt I needed to make a shift and change for all of what I thought I was doing to really start to step into this version. But it wasn't the actual event itself, the pro show. It was after it, because then I think I started to associate that identity with being good enough, being seen, being a leader. And then we went through COVID. I went through a breakout. I was living in Sydney at the time with my 2 cats. And I remember this because I moved into this studio apartment and I was alone and single. And that's when I opened up the computer, and I was doing well in the fitness space, but it just felt like something was missing. So I think when I started to understand life coaching or doing that diploma, it was like everything I had just gone through was coming up to the surface. Like all my relationship wounds, all my attachment, abandonment with men, my father stuff, my mother stuff. It was like, holy fuck. So I think when I started to more understand the personal development journey and start to go, you know what, I need to start doing something that's not about how I look or, being number one, because I remember chasing, I would say, perfectionism, being a winner, because my dad used to be like, if you're not at the front, you are a failure. If you're, bigger than these girls, you need to be skinnier. So I was always like, I think I was always wanting to make people proud because I wasn't feeling proud about myself. So I think coming back to your question about reclaiming my power, I had to first really look at myself and not make it about people seeing me and saying proud. It was like me actually being proud of me. And I think I'm still, as I said to you before, it's like, I don't stop. But I think that was a big moment for reclaiming my power. It's like, it's not about making my dad proud, my mum proud, my friends proud, people in the industry proud. It's like, be proud of yourself. I think that's the journey that I've been on. Yeah. And no, I think that's basically more the biggest thing that comes up for reclaiming my power. And I think, again, coming back to the bigger picture, it's like, whilst it's a human need to be significant, we know this, I think now it's using it for good, not just about how much money I make or how many people I get in a room now. And there's something here that I get to now marinate into, which gives me so much more purpose and a happy relationship.
Love it. Yeah, it's a very similar journey to Jackie, my partner, you know.
I've really loved she's going down the fertility journey too, right?
Yeah.
And she was a fitness person too, a pro.
Yeah, so she was IFBB. What were you?
WBFF, which is now FMG. But
Yeah, it was a very similar journey. She, got her pro card, and it looks great. You look amazing, but you feel shit.
Absolutely.
Like I did natural bodybuilding back in the day. It's like the better you look, the worse you feel often. And that journey of recognizing that you've put all of these things on the external reality rather than the internal reality, perpetuates that entire system. And that was very much her journey. She recognized. She had the meeting with like the fertility specialists, and they're like, well, you're not going to have kids unless you change stuff.
Yeah.
And in that experience, that was when she really started to dive deep into it and go, okay, cool. Something's got to change. Something's got to open up to deepen how this actually plays out. To actually go internally to be able to create that, because one of the things that we talk about in our work is like, if you want to have kids, it comes down to there's two things. Number one, if you perceive that your parents fucked you up, you won't have kids. If you perceive that your parents fucked you up, you won't have kids.
Oh, great. I was like, is that subconsciously? Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So like I remember I was in,
you're like, I'm telling you this.
I was in Egypt, and I was, we're going through Egypt with this group of people, and it was such a weird group because the majority of the conversations, I was taking like people through holographic processes while we're traveling around Egypt. And the majority of the things that we're talking about was like, until you heal your deeper relationship with your parents, it's like you won't have a baby.
Wow.
I did a process on one guy and then his wife there, and then they had never thought they were going to have kids before that. Wow. They're like, no, I'm never going to have kids. And then after them both going through that, they're like, oh, maybe this is a conversation that we get to have.
Yeah.
And there was a few other people that were having the same thing playing out. It's like, your body won't create a deeper sense of safety to be able to bring forth a new human, a new soul into the world if you don't actually feel it's safe because you perceive that you're going to fuck them up. It's
there's definitely, for me, I think I'm avoiding that. Oh, I'm not ready yet because I don't think they're going to feel secure.
Yep. Yeah. There's always going to be that piece, and until we, some of the greatest healing that we have is in relation to where we perceive that our parents fucked us up. It's like until we own where we've come from, we can't actually create from a secure place.
Yeah,
we only create from wounds. We only create from what we perceive that we didn't get, and part of holographics is like, how do we actually just start to recognize where we got it from somewhere else? How do we start to recognize that it's perfect, whole, and complete, and see, feel, and get that on an even deeper level? Because if we just get it in our head, which is the issue with most personal development, it's like, I get that it was perfect. It's like, no, you got to get that in your body.
Yeah.
Because from that place, then your body is actually in this secure place where you can actually receive those things. And
so true.
That dance, especially for overachiever winners,
yep.
is like, when I get to this place of success, then I'll do it. And it's like, well, yeah, it depends.
It's so true. I'm nodding with agreement and going, cool, I've been saying the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, so you teach obviously something around family stuff, or is that just because you're attracting a lot of people that are wanting to have kids, or they just haven't? Has that been a conversation?
Just happens in seasons.
Yeah.
So sometimes people, like the way that I talk about it is there's three primary areas of life that we're initiated into: our family, our relationship, and our work. And most people are focused on like getting the work initiation. Oh, I'm going to break through in work now. And it's like, oh, well, all your shit's coming up in your relationship right now. It's time to look at that. Or all your shit's coming up with your parents. You haven't cleaned all that up. And now it's starting to show up in your clients as well because you haven't cleaned it up over here. But if you clean it up over here, it's going to open up everything in your life. So when we look at that, there's different seasons that people go through with it. And when you do the work in one area, it flows to the other areas.
Yeah,
that's
true.
why, we look at your parents and it's like, oh, okay, well, we can see what's playing out for people. We can start to see how that's going to flow into your relationships, how that's going to flow into your work.
I honestly feel like it goes into everything, right? It's almost like it doesn't stop because a layer gets peeled as it goes. It's really interesting because I feel like a lot of stuff is coming up for family at the moment for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that most people don't look at. It's like whatever the season of initiation that you're in, you do the work there. Most people come to me and they're like, all right, well, I want to grow my business. And it's like, all right, we're going to grow your business and we're going to look at the other things too.
Yes. And they're probably like, no.
Yeah.
That would have been me. But I've come to just go, all right, Ruby, that's my kinesiology. I'm like, what are we doing today? She's like, well, and then I'm like, okay, that doesn't make sense. But it's been the best trusting again, to be honest, if I'm real, especially in the spiritual world. I can't believe I'm saying that. Yeah.
Why? Why do you not believe you're saying that?
I think because I reckon it's because I didn't want to admit that I was spiritual or that I had this intuition in me. And there was always moments that I would feel things. I'm like, I don't know if that's right or if I'm making this up or I'm being paranoid or overthinking or overanalyzing. And then obviously I've had it used against me that I'm like, I don't believe in it. But since working with Ruby, it's changed my life because I think I found safety to trust again. And maybe it was just me trusting myself, which is obviously everything is a mirror, right? And it's also my responsibility. But yeah, I think, do you know what's funny? I used to actually feel like if I reacted and expressed, fuck you, God, I fucking hate you, why? And then I'm like, he's going to thunderbolt me. So I'd almost tiptoe of actually feeling and expressing that there was anger, especially with what happened when I was a little girl. And so I had to work through that to kind of know that it's okay to express if you don't feel safe or if you feel angry. I think that was another big part of like me holding back with my voice too. It's like I didn't feel safe to express, especially with the spiritual world. I'm like, if you think I hate you, you're going to smite my whole family or something like that. But
yeah,
I'm also very dramatic.
Yeah, love it.
You're trying not to coach me right now.
No, I was thinking back to I deeply resonate with like going through that journey, obviously growing up in a church family and then going to the opposite end of the spectrum. Like the short version of it is my mum died when I was 21-ish. 23, 2011 it was. And she died from cancer, and the religion that she is, they don't go to doctors.
Wow.
And it's the most treatable form of cancer. So she could have lived. So if she had got the treatment.
I can see the anger then.
Yeah. So for 7 years, I didn't feel any of the grief around like her dying, and all of the resentment was like towards God. This is like bullshit. How can this happen? How can it? All of the pieces of that. And, I talk a lot about 7-year cycles. I remember I was in this ceremony. It was 7 years to the day, and I didn't realize till like as the ceremony was starting that it was 7 years to the day. And then I had 7 years of grief that came up in that ceremony.
What?
So much so that, the shaman that I was with was like taking me outside because I'm like making so much noise and going crazy. And if I go back just a little bit before that, I remember I was seeing this girl, and it was when I was at the end of my competing days, and I was like, she's too spiritual. I'm going to go do another comp.
Wow.
Because my choice is like, I go into this relationship with this spiritual person that takes me to sound healings, or I go and do another comp. So I was that far away from like, spirituality. You were like, bad. I'm just like, it's just like, oh, sound healing. Oh, I don't know. It's a bit woo-woo. It's hilarious. Then, after lots of work, I apologized to her many years later.
I have to see photos of you competing. I think that would be cool to see.
Yeah. So I did natural shows. So I did INBA, ICN, Musclemania.
Oh, awesome.
So we look back with Jackie. Apparently we're actually at a couple of shows together that we're competing, but we never
didn't meet at the shows.
Yeah. Well, I met her when I was selling from stage. And she's like, no, I'm not going to buy from you.
She did that.
And then a few years later, one of my team messaged her for her birthday. And then we started this interaction, and I saw that she'd moved to the Gold Coast too.
Yeah.
And she was like a little bit more spiritual then, and I was a little bit more spiritual then, and then we reconnected.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So I definitely resonate with like that to God through different experiences.
Yeah. And yours is massive as well.
Yeah. It's, I remember I was in.
Like, wow.
Yeah. I was in Bali, and it was then, I think it was 9 years to the day when this one happened, because I have noticed that a lot of my events that I run or that I attend seem to happen on that day, on the anniversary.
Wow. We need to talk about the 7-year cycle too.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's hilarious because then I was in Bali, and then, I recognized that morning what the date was. And I was like, it was 2020. And, it was just before like everything got shut down. We had a national tour planned, and we got out of Bali and everything was shut down. That was a bit of a side tangent, but I'm in that event, and, they're like, all right, well, what do you need today? And I'm like, I just recognized what the date was.
So I knew I had to get there.
So I had this huge big healing. And in that moment, it was like every single time that I had something come up with my mom, I'm like, it's my fucking mom again. This is bullshit. I thought I'd fucking healed this. But in that moment, it was like this massive shift for me, because it was like, this is life initiating me into a deeper level of embodiment. Every single time this comes up, it's something to be celebrated rather than resisted against. It's like, now I get a deeper level of connection to my life, to my business, to all of these things when that wounding, that pain that comes up with my mum. So it was this massively opening and shifting experience for me.
It's beautiful. Has that like ended now? where are we at with that? Was 2020, so you've got 2 more years. So
hilarious, fucking hilarious. So the 7-year cycle was like 7-year cycle of suppression to the day, 7 years to the day till I started the healing journey, and then 7 years of absolute healing on that. Shit. That 7-year cycle ended at our last 6-day event. I'm in the middle of our 6-day event talking about taking people through holographics, and I'm telling that story about the 7 years, and then I'm like, and today is the 11th of March, and now it's 14 years.
Oh my God.
So that 7-year cycle ended. So there's a season of much more openness now beyond it. And, I was like on stage, like bawling my eyes out with gratitude for all beautiful. Of the things that had played out. And, I recognize that if my mum, hadn't have died, then I wouldn't be speaking on stage. I wouldn't have the business that I have. I wouldn't have the partner that I have. I wouldn't have the kids that I have. I wouldn't have any of those things. So it's
beautiful.
She, gave up her life for me to be able to have the life that I have now.
Yeah, that's powerful. And connecting all the dots too.
Yep. It's easy in hindsight, not so much when you're in the thick of it going.
Oh, no. no.
She's like, what the fuck is this life? Oh my God.
Why the fuck? Again? But it'll make a great story. That's why I always say, like, it's going to make a great story, Jordan, I promise. I always say this because he's only been with me now for 3 years.
Yeah.
We've been together for 3 years.
Yeah.
And it's funny because he's a logical thinker, comes from a tradie background. And I'm always like, I'm sorry you had to date me. He's like, but I love you. But I think he's just like, it's been the craziest 3 years of his life. But I don't think he would have changed it for the world. I think he's done a lot of work on himself too. But yeah, it's just you find your soulmate, right? And it's unconditional love. But then you think about, I wonder what they think about when they're in it, when you're experiencing, all these spiritual awakenings or even, going through the motion. Because he's still like, I don't know, babe. Because I was like, yeah, look, Ruby said, he goes, well, yeah, look, I'm still a bit like the data shows you need to be on sales calls. These are the leads. So it's like we're both balancing act at the moment with that. But yeah, I wouldn't change it. It's fucking nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, that balance between, the head and the logic and the heart and the feeling of it all. And that's like one of the primary journeys of business. I was on a call with a client this morning, and she's like, Yeah, I just recognize over the last kind of 6 months, I've outsourced my power to all of the people that are doing our funnels, which is why they're not working. It's like, oh, I give them all of the strategy rather than going, oh, this is what actually lights me up. And I'm like, yep, that's what I've been trying to tell you.
Wow. What's your vision? Not your vision, but what's your relationship with strategy? And yeah, how do you blend your beautiful world into it?
Strategy, the right strategy at the wrong time is the wrong strategy. So when it comes to strategy, it's all about timing. So where someone is, if they have the right strategy, then they can blow up, or it can be just the same or worse.
Because of what they're not working on.
Yeah.
Within. Yeah.
So there's both pieces to it. I see the importance of strategy, and the majority of people know the strategy that would work. That's the best thing for them. It's just that they get in the way of it. That's why
It's true.
That's why we have holographics. It's like when we work with people on a high level, it's like, no, you don't just get strategy. It's like you've got to go through all of our transformation stuff too.
Yeah.
If you don't go through that, it's like, well, we're just not going to work together.
Yeah.
And people resist that. And then afterwards they're like, oh my God, that was the best part.
I know.
I'm like, remember when you said at the start where you didn't want that bit and that was the best bit?
I told you so.
So yeah, like the way that I look at it normally is it's for the majority of people in the majority of seasons that they're in, it's 2/3 removing the blocks and then 1/3 strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
You gotta have both. Most people know the strategy. It's just they're not doing it. They know the thing that would light them up that makes absolutely no logical sense, because most things that grow business that are like soul downloads make no logical sense.
Absolutely. That's something I've been saying to Jordan, and it's weird. We did recently like a purpose like writing together, and I think he's realized now that he wants to help me grow so it helps us grow. Because he's like, I don't want to be the forefront. I want you to be that, but I want to see us doing it together. And I think what held him back before was when we first started dating, it was a one-night stand. I always share this because I think it's important. But what I loved when I first started dating him was that he was saying he wanted to be an entrepreneur. All the men I had were drug addicts and other drug dealers when I was dating them. But he was someone that I could see growing with. That's something I always wanted. And then when we started dating, a lot of my wounds came up. And I think I was projecting what I wanted him to be when I realized it was a lot of the stuff I had to change. And he was dabbling in e-commerce. He was dabbling in this. And then when he made the decision to leave, his full-time job, it was because he was so depressed, Cody. Like he would have his body completely just start to shut down when he would drive to work. He was doing 60-hour weeks at a job that he hated as a tradie. And I come into the picture and I'm like, let me help you. Because, throughout us dating, he would help me. And I had this like big, I've got this moment. And when he left, it honestly was the hardest thing for us both because we would fight. We were in each other's hairs. I was making him do all of these different roles. I know you're like, I know this part too well. And
yes.
Now with the work we've done on each other, coming to realization, our zone of geniuses, and him going into, what? Maybe I'm meant to support us and help you grow so it helps us grow. And that was a big realization because I think for a while there I was like, you need to be this, you need to be the provider, you need to be this. And then I think we've now just realized the union of our relationship has made us grow within, us heal our trauma together. When I say healing. And it's been a really good year for us as a couple. But it's just that first conversation of him going, maybe I'm meant to just help you. And I was like, okay, I like this. And maybe along the way he'll find something, but he's really good at numbers and ads, and that's helping us. And yeah, it's been really interesting.
Yeah, it's, you understand when you get into business with a partner, you recognize why they say don't do business with family.
Yeah. And then my brother's like, do you want a sales center? I was like, oh my God, what am I going to be healing now? And does Jack work with you?
Yeah.
How was that for you guys?
We have different seasons of it. Sometimes it's absolutely amazing, and other times I want to throttle her.
Yep.
It's definitely been an initiation. Like we got together just before that event in 2020. We went to that retreat, and she was still a PT then, and she basically we came back and were the first people to go into lockdown from the flights. So the entire world started to shut down from then.
Yeah, shit.
So she was a PT. So she basically just like lost her income overnight. And I was doing tons of events. So we took everything online. So she just basically came into the business then, and she had a degree in marketing. So she's doing all of those pieces.
Yeah.
And then, you know, as we go through different iterations of me burning the business down as I do, you know, she's evolved into different roles.
Yeah, that's cool.
And, you know, as she's gone through her healing journey, that means that her role has evolved. She's done certain things in the business. Now she does different things in the business. She's got a
3-week-year-old too now.
Yeah, 2 kids. So, you know, the amount of hours that she puts into the business fluctuates.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes sometimes in the early days she was working not as much as me because I was a workaholic, but she was working, you know, 40, 50 hours in the business. And then, you know, we have a kid, and then that changes. It drops down to, you know, 20, 30 hours. Now we have 2, and it's like, oh, well, she'll do, you know, 5 to 10 hours in the business just doing things. And then, you know, again, the same and her own coaching stuff and all of the fertility stuff. Because as we've started to grow together, that's meant that she started to create more of her own things rather than just the things that we create together. And I start to create more of my own things.
Yeah.
So she has more of like the fertility women's coaching part, and then I talk more business over here.
Yeah.
So she doesn't do as much of that, but then we do the transformation stuff together.
It's good though. I feel like that's where we would want to go eventually. I mean, who knows? I see Jordan with little kids, and he's like the stay-at-home dad. And I'm like, see you guys, we're going. I'm going to speak over to New York. And he always jokes like, I'm coming with the kids. We're all going together. I'm like, okay. No, but that's really cool to hear. So it just means that it's evolving as you guys both evolve, as your roles evolve. Yeah.
Yeah. And that comes with, you know, the arguments that come along with it of recalibrating is the politically correct term for it rather than arguments. We're recalibrating the business.
I love that. I'm going to steal that. That's awesome.
Yes. And sometimes it's just a flat out fight.
Yeah.
So.
No, I'm glad you're human.
And yeah, that's one of the things with like our longer events as well. We're, you know, sometimes fighting at the back of the room that everyone kind of sees.
I was going to say, there was something Cody sent Chester. She's like, my husband and I don't fight in public. So do you guys do that because it's good to show it's healthy, or?
Yeah, you don't hide it.
Yeah.
Most people think that they hide all of their shit, but it's like written all over your face.
Yeah, true.
You know, if Jackie, one of the masculine wounds is being interrupted by the feminine. And if I'm on stage and Jackie needs to be seen, then she unendingly interrupts me. So that's a dynamic that plays out a lot of the time. And you can see my response and you can see her response of needing to be seen. So it's our wounding playing out. And we've gotten 1,000,000 times better than that. She hasn't thrown a chair at me in a few years. So that's progress.
I like her.
She's not the only person who's thrown a chair at me either. But
really?
That's another story for another time.
Okay. I was like, who?
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, especially in the work that you do, how do you bring all of yourself into what you're actually bringing to the world? How do you bring that authentic part of you rather than the shiny social media version of it?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think I used to have this big belief that I had to show everything, and now I'm doing less of that and slowing down, which is really hard. And trusting as well. I find even now that this event I'm doing in a couple of weeks, it's not finished. And the old masculine, structured, rehearse, perfect, drop this line I've not done, because every time I go do it or say I'm going to do it, I resist. So I feel that a lot of what I'm really wanting to bring right now is the intuition side of things. Yes, the creativity, but I feel I really want to blend a lot of my dancer, acting, creative Tam into it, so it's more playful and fun, because I do feel like I'm still a little bit of a child. You know, there's you know, me thinking about Lilo and Stitch, my partner just bought me a plush toy, and I know that part of me, like I put stickers on my diaries. Like I really want it to be playful because I think it brings out the feminine in me while still having that there is a formula and structure. And a lot of the times when I think about being on stage as a dancer, there was always really about the fourth wall. There was a lot about, you know, being present, but presence now is different. And I remember, and it's something I was thinking about today, and it's sort of like a great story around being more yourself. You know, every time I used to rehearse or do monologues for auditions, and it was the one I did for NIDA, I played like a 60-year-old, and NIDA was like, why are you playing a 60-year-old? You're 18. And I didn't quite understand it back then. I think I was always trying to be someone I wasn't. So I really feel like what I'm bringing now into the world is like owning who you are, the messy, the chaotic, the perfectionist, the partiness, the business, the professional. So I feel like people have more ownership of that, and that gets to be part of your brand too. And it gets to also be a way that you share your story to impact others, because if you can shift the belief in others while still being, you know, professional, as well as still being structured, as well as being playful, I think that becomes more bringing the magic into the world and authenticity, as well as just what people see, you know, here. There's more to it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think that's the perfect thing to wrap up on. This has been fun. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I've had the best time. I definitely have lots of questions about who threw that chair.
And it is an open loop.
Yes.
Tune in next week for the open chair story, the throwing chair story.
Thank you so much, Cody. It's been awesome.
Great. Thank you.